What do you get when you take a can of coconut cream, an onion, salt, and some genuine, bona fide A1 horse meat? A delectable delicacy or a moral dilemma? This documentary aims to present an honest and unfiltered account of the history surrounding the sale and consumption of horse meat in New Zealand. In the scope of world history, the presence of horse meat in the South Pacific is a relatively recent development. For example, horses were first brought to the island nation of Tonga by Captain James Cook during his third voyage in the 18th century. However, these initial animals did not survive the journey. It wasn't until around 1847 that horses became firmly established in Tonga, introduced by French traders and Christian missionaries. Much like in many other cultures, horses in Tonga were highly valued companions, used for moving carts and transporting families between villages. A cultural ethic emerged where horses were generally not killed specifically for meat, but were instead feasted upon only after dying of natural causes or accidental injury. This pragmatic approach made the meat a readily available and affordable protein source, especially during times when food options were extra scarce. As Tongan communities migrated to New Zealand, along came this culinary heritage, finding a new landscape where the horse was viewed almost exclusively through the lens of sport, recreation, or companionship. By the early 2000s, this cultural practice began to clash openly with New Zealand's burgeoning and rigid food safety infrastructure. While the European tradition of dedicated horse butcheries known as boucheries chevalines existed in places like France and Italy, New Zealand's domestic market remained largely hostile to the idea of the horse as a food source. This discrepancy led to a peculiar situation. Horse meat could be legally processed for export to countries like Russia, Belgium, and Japan, but within New Zealand borders, it was almost exclusively relegated to use as pet food. For many families, the consumption of horse meat is not a provocative statement, but a practical and cultural reality. The traditional Tongan dish known as hoosi, usually featuring diced onions, coconut cream, and salt, is considered a delicacy. Historically, it was often reserved for significant life events such as birthdays, funerals, or weddings, but nowadays it's become more widely accepted as a meal to be enjoyed whenever, frequently seen being sold on Facebook Marketplace and during community events. Well-known figures such as Olympic gold medalist Valerie Adams have publicly shared their enjoyment of the dish and encouraged others to look past the Western taboo. The meat is described as a sweeter, more tender version of beef, notably high in protein and low in fat. However, the reality of obtaining this meat in New Zealand involves a calculated risk. Documented cases have shown that an 18 kg box of horse meat intended specifically for pet food could be purchased for as cheap as $50. Vendors at markets in areas such as Otahuhu and Mangere became the primary nodes for this trade. While the meat was often correctly labeled as unfit for human consumption to satisfy the letter of the law, the verbal marketing on the ground told a different story. Sellers would frequently assure customers that the meat was safe to eat, effectively bypassing the regulatory safeguards intended to protect the public. The impact on the community is twofold. On one hand, it provides an affordable, culturally significant food source. On the other, it places vulnerable populations at risk of consuming meat contaminated with veterinary medicines, such as worming compounds and antibiotics. This creates a cycle where the community is mostly forced into the shadows to maintain their traditions, away from the oversight of food safety inspectors. The first major crackdown occurred in late 2009, when a television investigation launched by the now discontinued current events show Close Up did a story on the matter. The report alleged that horse meat processed at a pet food abattoir in the small Waikato regional town Tuakau was being sold illegally for human consumption at Auckland markets. New Zealand Food Safety Authority Compliance Director Jeff Allen compared the situation to putting 95-octane petrol into an airplane, meaning both are definitely fuel, but the quality of production and safety are worlds apart. The investigation was classified as a priority due to the immediate risk of people being made sick by the unregulated horse meat. During the close-up investigation, the owner of the Gillard meat processors in Tuakau was questioned about food safety. Instead of providing clear answers, footage shows him embracing and kissing the reporter in a series of unsolicited hongis, a traditional Maori greeting performed by the pressing of noses, as well as unsolicited cheek kisses. When the reporter persisted, the owner returned with a meat hook in his hand, stating it was better than trying to punch the journalist for being on private property. The incident highlighted the volatility and hostility surrounding the industry and the lengths to which some would go to avoid official scrutiny. Despite the television evidence, the Ministry for Primary Industries struggled to secure formal prosecutions. Much of the defense relied on the labels stating the meat was intended for pets, even where verbal transactions suggested otherwise. This position was repeatedly advanced by Gillard meat processors, which besides from just processing the meat, also operated market stalls. This legal grey area allowed the trade to persist for years. Unlike the horse meat scandal that swept across Europe in 2013, which found products like frozen beef lasagna containing up to 100% undeclared horse meat, the primary actors in this local controversy are not high-level criminal syndicates. Instead, they are a network of abattoirs and small-scale vendors. Most horse meat in New Zealand is sourced from places called knacker yards, meat processors that handle retired, aged, or injured horses. While most of the meat is exported overseas where human consumption is more regulated, the domestic supply chain is far more restricted. As of 2026, the Ministry for Primary Industries notes that there is only one meat processor in the entire country registered to slaughter and process horse meat for human consumption. The penalties for breaching regulations are significant. Individuals found knowingly preparing or selling meat unfit for human consumption can face fines of up to $100,000 or a year in prison, while for companies, these fines can escalate to $500,000. But as mentioned before, prosecution remains rare, as the presence of pet food labeling provides a layer of protection to vendors. As noted in a 2013 news article, Mangry Market marketing manager Roy Bagshaw bluntly stated, "If people want to go to the supermarket and buy a can of cat meat to eat, you can't do anything about it." The same article noted that Tongan Advisory Council member Melino Maka wants to prevent people selling low horsey to innocent, unknowing consumers at community events. That really is the worst part. And I've asked people, do you really know what you're eating? But people deny it. It's been going on for decades. I'm fighting a losing battle, he stated. More recently, in December 2025, an East Auckland bakery went viral for its take on the traditional Tongan dish. Pakuranga Bakery started selling pies containing horse meat, to much positive reception from customers and patrons alike. But just a month later, the bakery had pulled their most recent creation after the Auckland Council received a complaint and sent inspectors to investigate. The issue once again stemmed from the meat itself not being sourced from a registered, human-grade horse meat processor. The bakery manager was completely compliant, noting the item was only added after repeated customer requests. "We just bought the filling, because I just saw everyone do it, and all the customers have been asking for it. We don't know how to make it. We just went to buy the filling from a Tongan guy. He just prepared it for us, and we just chucked it in a pie." Auckland Council made it clear that there had been no reports of sickness from Pakuranga Bakery's pies, and that the bakery itself was not under further investigation. However, they did note that New Zealand Food Safety is investigating the original source of the horse meat. The horse meat controversy in New Zealand is a microcosm of a larger tension between Western companion animal sentimentality and Pacific livestock pragmatism. Simply put, the outrage wasn't solely to do with just food safety. It was about clashing views over what animals are, quote-unquote, acceptable to eat. While some have argued that eating domestic animals is deeply disturbing in New Zealand society, others point out the inherent hypocrisy. Animal welfare campaigners have noted that while New Zealanders may demonize the consumption of certain meat locally, the country continues to profit from exporting hundreds of thousands of kilograms of horse meat to Europe every year. Another vital consideration is the role of education and cultural understanding, both at a governmental and a societal level. This was highlighted in the 2009 case of Tongan man Pahia Taufa. Firefighters, called out to a home in Mangry due to reports of heavy smoke, discovered Mr. Taufa roasting a pit bull terrier cross in an umu pit in his backyard. SPCA inspectors removed the partially charred body, but were stunned to find they could not prosecute, as under law, it is not illegal to kill and eat a dog in New Zealand, provided the animal is slaughtered humanely. As Mr. Taufa had rendered the dog unconscious, with a blow to the head before slitting its throat, his actions were deemed as legal. His confusion towards the outrage and reasoning behind the killing provided a raw look at the cultural and practical motivations behind the act. He said the dog was a Tongan delicacy and had no idea there was an issue with eating dog in New Zealand, even claiming it was easier on the stomach than pork. "If we eat heaps of pig, you get a sore stomach. But when we eat dog, it doesn't matter how much you eat, nothing is wrong with the tummy," he stated. Mary Fanua, managing editor of a Tongan-based news website, noted that while dogs are sometimes consumed in Tonga, the practice is rather associated with necessity. People do eat dog, but you can't go to the market and buy dog meat. It is generally associated with a level of poverty and as a last resort, she stated. And while the Auckland mayor at the time, John Banks, condemned the killing of the former canine companion, he stressed the importance of education rather than hatred. For many people, this is absolutely repulsive, but the way forward is education. This man has obviously not been taught that killing and eating a domestic pet is not right in New Zealand, he stated. But while the mayor emphasized education, the public perception is often skewed and contorted by by media and commercial reaction. Shortly after the case made headlines, the Hell's Pizza chain capitalized on the controversy with a billboard campaign for their newest dessert menu item. The ad used a controversial double entendre that many in the community found racist and in poor taste, stating, "At least our brownie won't eat your pet dog." The advert's creator, Alan Jones, argued that New Zealand had become too PC, describing the billboard as an attempt to poke fun at a topical issue. The Advertising Standards Authority Complaints Board agreed with community sentiment, finding that the use of the term brownie to refer to a broad group of people based on skin color was distasteful and offensive, ultimately leading to the billboard's removal. Jumping forward to 2026, Melino Maka continues his advocacy for improved community quality of life. During a Radio New Zealand appearance, Maka argued that segments of the pet food meat industry continue to knowingly and disproportionately target Pacific communities with unregulated meat. He said he's personally engaged with suppliers at the Mangere market, requesting that brightly colored food dye be added to the meat to clearly signal it was intended for pets. According to Maka, those requests were met with little response, with suppliers instead continuing to operate at the fringes of the law. Melino also published an article suggesting that the current regulatory approach towards such topics has shifted away from community partnership and closer toward bureaucratic enforcement. He says that the removal of low hoosi pies from the Pakuranga bakery should not be viewed as an isolated incident, but highlights deep gaps in the current regulatory system. He points to a convergence of factors: the export of high-quality horse meat overseas, financial hardship, limited understanding of food safety, and cultural obligations within his community, all compounded by broader societal judgment and government restrictions. He stresses the need for change across all levels, warning that as long as regulated food remains unaffordable, families will continue to rely on informal, unregulated supply chains, perpetuating the cycle of risk. The story of horse meat in New Zealand is not just about a dish, it is about the collision of law, culture, and the economy of the dinner table. In a multicultural society, where do we draw the line between protecting the public and respecting tradition? And if the demand for this meat is not that big a deal to the thousands who consume it, why is there still no affordable, legal way for this community to access their traditional food? Is it simply a matter of supply and demand, which has priced a community out of its own heritage, or a continual, systematic failure of cultural consideration? What are your thoughts on the regulation of traditional foods in New Zealand? Should the government make it easier for domestic horse meat to be processed for human consumption to prevent the sale of pet food, or should the taboo remain enforced by pricing and law? Share your perspectives in the comments below. If you found this documentary informative, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more in-depth explorations of often overlooked, lesser-known stories. Who else would you like to see us detail next? Your engagement helps us continue to shed light on otherwise unheard narratives.